Page 2. The Magic Knight's Entrance Exam. With Asta and Yuno's promise renewed outside the Grimoire Tower, the boys began training harder than ever to master their grimoires. Yuno found new and complex magic within his grimoire. These elevated the already high level of wind magic he possessed. Asta, for his part, continued with his typical strength training, cranking out thousands of push-ups, sit-ups, and all manner of weight training daily. He completed all of this in addition to including the heavy sword that his grimoire provided. He trained with the blade constantly, which hardened his muscles and developed more combat-oriented muscle memory. After 6 months of this relentless training, the two orphans set out for the royal capital where the Magic Knight's entrance exams were held yearly. The Colosseum, while only 2 levels, towered larger than any building Asta or Yuno had ever seen. Each floor rose higher than the tower they had received their grimoires from. Architecturally, the building was encircled by arched entrances and was constructed entirely out of sturdy stones set perfectly against one another to allow for no gaps. Inside, there was a circular veranda before it opened totally into a wide arena, completely devoid of any other furnishments. The Magic Knights, 9 squads of mages specializing in battle that work directly under the command of the Wizard King. This army of heroes risks their lives to protect the Clover Kingdom. They are admired by the entire nation. These were the elite that Asta and Yuno are attempting to join and gain the respect of. For if they were to become the Wizard King, they would first need to ascend through the ranks of Magic Knights and even become a captain of their own squad. To even enter the Magic Knights, the boys would have to take the first step and outperform the hundreds of mages that had turned out to take the exam. As the Magic Knight hopefuls milled about in the arena, they were bombarded by dozens of small, black-winged, white-chested birds. Most were red-faced around the beak. "Phew! I'm getting nervous," confessed one mage while a bird began nesting in his hair. "Ow! Ow! Ow! What the heck is going on with these birds?" complained one mage who was being pecked incessantly by 3 birds. Another test-taker explained, "They're the famous anti-birds of the exam venue. The less magic power you have, the more they peck at you." The one who was being pecked exclaimed, "Hey, look at him! Not a single bird is going near him." "Oh, it's him! The one from the boonies who was chosen by the 4-leaf clover grimoire." "4-leaf clover?" exclaimed one who hadn't heard of Yuno before this. Although, as time went on, more and more hopeful Magic Knights became aware of the boy who had been chosen by the 4-leaf. "Heh," mumbled Asta. "One of us is going to become the Wizard King. Our legend starts here, Yuno!" Asta, as always, declared his intentions to the world, totally unabashed. "I'll show you the results of my 6 months of training. Ow!" Asta, naturally having no magic at all, was under a barrage of pecking from the anti-birds. "Ah! What's up with these freaking birds?" "Get a look at him. That's really bad, even for someone from the boonies." Many of the test-takers began jeering Asta for how many birds were attracted to him. He was now running from over a dozen of them. Seeing someone with seemingly such little power put many participants at ease. Meanwhile, in Asta and Yuno's hometown of Haj, "I'm not worried about Yuno, but are you sure it was okay to let Asta go?" Father Orsi was divulging his doubts of Drowit's decision to the master of the grimoires. He continued, "That book he obtained, was it really a grimoire?" "I have no idea," confessed Drowit. "Since I don't know, I've decided to let the mages and the Magic Knights handle this problem." While this answer stunned Father Orsi, he was not used to such brashness from adults. Only children were ever this painfully honest. Drowit contemplated this predicament and thought to himself, "That grimoire, could it be?" Father Orsi, now just speaking to break the silence that had engrossed the room. Well, I'm sure Asta won't pass, and will come back soon enough. Besides, Yuno was with him. He'll be fine." While Orsi would not acknowledge this, he was worried about both of the boys he raised. While he was confident Yuno could take care of himself, Asta worried him greatly. Sister Lily shared Father Orsi's concern and was praying for the young boy. As the sister's thoughts dwelled on the boy and how he was doing miles away, he was dealing with more anti-birds than ever. As Asta continued screaming in annoyance and pain, he dashed all around the arena, hoping the birds would lose interest. Unfortunately for him, he forgot to pay attention to his surroundings and ran straight into what he initially thought was a wall. When he got up, he realized it was a person and immediately apologized. "Oh, sorry for bumping into you." Asta's so far rotten luck continued as he realized he did walk into a wall, a towering wall of muscle. The man had absolute black, unruly hair that seemed to flow in all different directions. He had darker skin than most people Asta had ever seen in the Clover Kingdom. With a lit cigarette in his mouth, he slowly turned a menacing glare down to Asta and said simply, "You want to die, runt?" "What the heck? Who's this guy?" Asta's thoughts raced as he tried to figure out who this imposing figure was. "He has crazy eyes of a murderer. His neck is so thick, thicker than his head. There's no way he's a mage. He's got a hell of a presence. Is he really the same age as the rest of us? No, hold it." Asta's thoughts continued. "I can't judge someone based on their appearance. I must have misheard him. Just be friendly." Asta struck a friendly pose, hoping to rectify this poor first impression. "Whoa, you look really old for a kid. You must have had so much hardship." The strange, dark mass of a person lowered his gaze once again. His aura flared and became an even more imposing threat than before. He seized Asta by the top of his head, lifted him into the air, and began to squeeze. Asta thought the force was going to be enough to pop his head like Haj's famous pot potatoes that he was so fond of. "Looks like you are ready to die," said the stranger, and he began squeezing even harder. "Gah!" Asta cried. He felt like his skull was beginning to crack in several places. "Ah, there you are, Mr. Yami." Another older-looking mage was making his way through the crowd towards Asta and this Yami character. He had light brown hair and was wearing a green long-sleeved tunic under a black shoulder-length robe that had a weird-looking yellow symbol of a bull. "What are you doing down here? Sheesh." "Huh? I'm about to wring this guy's neck," replied Yami. Please don't. A Magic Knight's captain shouldn't be killing examinees. Besides, why are you down here in the first place?" "Huh? I went to take a dump, then got lost." At this point, more of the examinees had noticed the out-of-place Magic Knights, and as they were staring at the strange interaction, the two subordinates following Captain Yami were identified by the crowd. "Wow, that's Finral Rulcase. He's a rare spatial magic user, famous for hitting on women so much that it's a hindrance to his duties," one onlooker explained. Another called out when he saw the second mage who was with Finral. "And that's Gordon Agrippa, the incantation magic expert. But he's impossible to talk to. Plus he's frightening." Most of the common folk thought Gordon's appearance to be frightening. In all honesty, even the members of his own Magic Knight squad thought he was creepy. His face was ghostly white, paler than any natural shade of human skin, almost as if it was painted that way. To accentuate how pale the rest of his face was, his lips were a deep midnight black, which matched the area around his sunken eyes. Gordon wore a similar robe to Finral, but was also wearing a short-brimmed loose cap over his buzzed black hair. The cap had a matching bull symbol on it. The most familiar examinees continued. "Then he must be the one who's in charge of them. The Lord of Destruction, Yami Sukahiro, captain of the Magic Knight Squad, the Black Bulls." "The Black Bulls?" exclaimed one participant with a worried tone. "The cost of damage they cause exceeds their military exploits. That group is full of scoundrels. I heard there's not a decent one among them." That's one Magic Knight Squad I would not want to be in," chimed another onlooker. All the while, Asta's head was being stressed under an immense amount of pressure from the Black Bull's captain. Finally, Asta began to push back. He squared his feet, as he had learned to do with his sword practice. His hands latched onto the heavy muscled arm gripping his head, and he began to push with all his might. While he couldn't remove the hand entirely, he did feel the pressure relieve a little bit. When Asta thought the captain was about to redouble his efforts, suddenly, all of the anti-birds in the Colosseum fled. This mad rush of movement drew every pair of eyes in the stadium up to the second level, where all of the Magic Knights captains had appeared, 8 of the strongest mages in the country. Their mere presence was more than enough to dispel the nuisance of the anti-birds. They were an imposing force on anyone who could sense mana. It's said that one captain is worth 100 Magic Knights. Given that equation, there was a whole army, all contained in this group. In total, there are 9 Magic Knight squads. The Golden Dawn, the Crimson Lions, Silver Eagles, Blue Rose Knights, Coral Peacocks, Aqua Deer, Green Mantis, Purple Orcas, and the Black Bulls. Thanks for waiting, invited examinees, called one captain who was wearing a feathered gold, blue, and red mask. At this greeting, nearly the entire stadium erupted into cheers, for it was the captain of the Golden Dawn who had spoken, William Vengeance. "You're in luck, runt." Captain Yami had released Asta. Now he was more annoyed that the other captains had not waited for his return before starting. "You better appreciate your saved life, or I'm gonna kill you." "What?" Asta cried and returned, but Captain Yami had already walked away with his subordinates, determined to find some way of getting back at his fellow captains for embarrassing him. "I'm going to be in charge of the exams this year," continued the Golden Dawn's Captain Vengeance, complimenting the comically large white feather that protruded from the top of his mask. Captain Vengeance wore a gold cape with the insignia of the Golden Dawn over the left breast, which is a sun rising over a kingdom. Under his cape was a full-length red robe and white tunic. The Golden Dawn were known as the strongest and most accomplished Magic Knight squad in the kingdom, mainly due to Vengeance's leadership and overwhelming magic. But no one in the kingdom knew what the captain really looked like. He was never seen in public without his mask. Even members of his own squad had never met with him without his mask on. As awe-inspiring as he is, this insistence on a mask attracted more than a few curious eyes from his peers. "I heard he took the enemy general's head in the last battle," murmured one admirer. "Well, he's respected by squad members, too," remarked another. "Man, I hope I can join the Golden Dawn." "Are you stupid?" a friend exclaimed. "Only the elite of the aristocrats can join the Golden Dawn." As Asta and Yuno took in the strongest Magic Knight captain, it dawned on them that this man was probably next in line to be the Wizard King. This realization drove the boys to further scrutinize the man they knew they would have to beat in order to achieve their dream. "Magic Tree Descend!" called Captain Vengeance as his grimoire flew out of its scabbard and into his hand. As he casted this incantation, all of the examinees pivoted upwards to look from Captain Vengeance to the sky above, where a tree had appeared and whose roots were rapidly growing downwards towards them. The speed of this creation cracked the sky. Seemingly exploding into the air, loud cracks could be heard for miles around the examination venue. The roots continued to grow thinner the closer they came to the ground, branching out to give each examinee a broom made from the same magic Vengeance had just cast. The display of magic was so incredible, even Finral Rulacase of the Black Bulls exclaimed, "Amazing as always." Asta and Yuno were even more impressed, as they solidified their resolve to pass this man who would be considered the next Wizard King. "We shall now begin the Magic Knight's entrance exam," Vengeance continued. "We're going to have you go through a multitude of tests. The 9 captains of the Magic Knights will be judging your progress. We shall then select the candidates we want in our squads. Those who are not chosen by any of the captains are judged to lack the talents needed to join the Magic Knights." "I'm definitely going to be chosen," Asta thought to himself. Then, as Vengeance explained the first task, he felt his confidence shake slightly. The first test is to fly using those broomsticks. Any mage who can control their magical powers can do it instinctively. It's the most basic method of moving about for a mage. So if you can't fly on a broomstick, there's no future for you here. Every mage in the arena mounted their brooms and began attempting to channel their mana into it, willing the broom to leave the ground. Some examinees struggled with this simple display of magic control. Others seemed more adept at being able to exercise this ability freely. But no one came close to Yuno. He didn't even mount his broom. He simply stood on top of it as if he was balancing on a fence post and elevated to the top of the group. As people were admiring the boy chosen by the four-leaf clover grimoire, Asta was feeling some flashbacks to the day they got their grimoires. After they had assessed Yuno's incredible ability, every captain and most of the participants finally noticed the one examinee who hadn't even been able to leave the ground yet, Asta. No matter how hard he struggled, nor how much he focused on trying to make his broom fly, no amount of Magoro leaf juice in the world was going to get this broom off the ground. "What's going on?" questioned Captain Fuegoleon of the Crimson Lions. Even with very little magic power, he should at least be able to float a little. As Asta continued to strain against the will of gravity, with nothing more than his muscles and tenacity, the jeering began just as it had during the awarding ceremony. "What the heck, man? This twerp's unbelievable. Okay, he's totally not making the cut. Why is he even here?" Then one of the other examinees dismounted next to Asta and approached him. "Ha ha! You're a funny guy. My name is Seke. Nice to meet you." Seke was a good-looking mage for his age. He seemed to put a lot of effort into his hair, Asta thought. Other than the spiked golden brown hair, he wore a simple black tunic and green cloak. Hey! I'm Asta! Come on now, thought Seke. This is easy. Just relax and let go. As he explained this to Asta, he effortlessly floated up into the air. Whoa! That's pretty amazing! Damn it! Seke took note of the struggling boy, then thought to himself, Perfect! I'll look a lot better being compared to a pathetic bottom dweller like you. Seke decided he would stick by Asta's side through the duration of the exam, in an attempt to look more talented than he was by comparison. The rest of the tests went on in a similar way to the first. Asta was unable to display any projectile magic, while Seke put a big hole in the wall they were aiming at. Asta was unable to control an object mid-flight with magic, while Seke easily redirected the stone into the bullseye of the floating target. Asta was unable to use any creation magic, while Seke displayed an impressive talent for the art of creating a replica statue of himself. Finally, they got to the final test, Asta's last chance to prove himself. Next, Captain Vengeance explained, is the final test. In this test, you will engage in actual combat. You will partner up with someone and fight him or her. You may use your grimoire. I'm sure you've mastered one or two attack spells, right? The main job of the Magic Knights is battle. Feel free to show us what you're capable of. Every participant began to analyze the situation. It would not look good to the captains to lose in combat. But if they defeated a weak opponent, what would that prove? They all knew they needed to pick their opponents wisely to impress the captains as much as possible. Crap! Asta thought in a moment of rare self-awareness. So far, all I've done in this exam is yell. I need to fight someone who looks strong and impress the captains. But will anyone fight me when I have no magic powers? Asta, you can be my opponent, called Seke in a mockingly charitable voice. Asta missed the sarcasm entirely and was just thankful to be going up against someone who had done so well throughout the exam. You're willing to fight against little old me? Seke! Of course, answered Seke in his same tone. Once it appeared everyone had a partner, Captain Vengeance began giving more instructions. The match is over when a competitor gives up or can't fight anymore. We have a mage who can use healing magic in tow, so fight freely. Now, would the first competitors come forward? Asta and Seke immediately stepped into the center of the arena, all eyes darting to them. "Let's put our ambitions on the line and fight with no reservations, fair and square, all right?" Asta said optimistically. Seke patted him on the shoulder, leaned in close, smirked, and dropped his voice to a whisper. "Ha, you're just a filthy little rat who doesn't belong here. You don't have to try any longer. I'll have a blast as a member of the Magic Knights for you, and I'll do that without even putting forth much effort. Go back to the boonies and continue your sad, pathetic dump of a life." Seke finished and drew back, satisfied he had fully and completely thrashed the boy's spirit. Asta had a completely blank, emotionless face when Captain Vengeance called, "Begin!" "I'm not going to hold back," shouted Seke. "Come and get me, Asta! Ha-ha! Bronze creation magic! Seke Magnum Cannonball!" Asta had seen fairly devastating attack spells from Yuno and other mages in his time, but Sister Lily's Holy Fist of Love was the only complex creation magic he had ever seen up close until now. Seke's Magnum Cannonball completely encased him in a magical barrier while sprouting multiple turrets for attack in any direction. Seke's thoughts ran rampant with his arrogance and distaste towards Asta. "Check out my magic! My magical powers are bronzified and protect me as they shoot out magic bullets. It's defense and offense all in one. I'm going to block the heck out of your weak attacks and show the captains how good I am at defense. Then, once you're tired, I'll crush you! Ha-ha!" Again, comments of praise came from the Black Bull's Finral. "That's quite some impressive magic for an examinee. Doesn't it look like that spiky bug? You know, the one from the Mimo Amazon?" replied Yami. Again, the jeering and audible doubts came at Asta. "This match is done. The Hick's power isn't enough to make a dent. Oh man, I wish I could have fought that twerp. Whoa, check out his grimoire. It's so tattered. Can he even use magic? I can't believe he's even here. Lowly peasant from the boonies. No squad will want you." The muttering was only silenced when Seke repeated his challenge. "Don't hold back. I'm ready for you. Ha-ha! Got it!" Asta replied as his muscles tensed. "Here I go!" Asta took one step that echoed around the Colosseum. He seemed to fly at Seke faster than most participants could follow. His sword effortlessly jumped out of his grimoire as it kept pace with Asta. He gripped the hilt and felt the now familiar handle, recounting the months of training, the thousands of sword strokes he had practiced against trees, air, and imaginary opponents. But this opponent was not imaginary. This opponent was Seke Bronzaza, a mage who had impressed multiple captains that day with his displays of magic proficiency. Now, it was his turn to shock and impress the captains. "He's fast," thought Captain Vengeance. "Is he using magic to increase his movements?" As if they were having a conversation, Captain Yami of the Black Bulls disagreed. "No, it's just that his physical ability is that good." Asta's immense physical strength allowed him to move so fast, even while wielding the cumbersome weapon. Seke had only just registered Asta's first step when it was all over. He brought down his giant 2-meter sword in a vertical cut, crashing through Seke's impeccable defense, and cracking the ground underneath Seke's body with the force of the blow. The entire arena was silent. No one could believe the outcome. It seemed so impossible for this nobody from the Forsaken Realm to beat a high-class mage as he did. More surprised than anyone was Seke himself. He had planned so carefully. He watched this Hick fail at every single test they had been given. There weren't any gaps in his plan. And yet, he was on his back, on the verge of losing consciousness. But even he heard Asta's next words. "I'm not here just to join the Magic Knights and have a blast without putting in any effort. I'm here to work my ass off and become the Wizard King!" Silent as ever, Captain Vengeance only took interest in Asta's grimoire. But Captain Yami was audibly impressed. "I see how it is, runt." Just like when Asta had first received his grimoire and defeated Revchi, the disgraced former magic knight. Yuno looked at his brother with unabashed admiration, and thought to himself, "Asta, the one who is going to beat you is me.